you purposefully. I have always wanted, Senator, to know what exactly is in the BBI amendment for the Senate.
Well, there are various amendments. You will find out that the executive is going to be in the National Assembly.
Yes.
So questions of accountability, the focus is going to shift to the Senate. And for that purpose, you'll find that a lot of the vetting process, a lot of the appointments to constitutional offices
yes.
are going to take place in the Senate. Mm-hmm. And I think that's an enhanced role. If you look at the activities of the Congress in the United States, a lot of time is spent not only on oversight, but in vetting, federal appointees. And I think Senate
coming to the Senate.
Is coming to the Senate.
But what's the difference between what you're saying and what already exists in Article 96(1) and 2? What is the difference?
The difference is that, the functions that are set out in Article 96 are very different from these functions. Those functions you'll find they are specifically stated in specific articles and provisions of the Constitution that in the appointment of, let's say, the Chief Justice, it is the National Assembly or the Senate which will carry out, the vetting process. So in regard to the BBI, a lot of that activity and functions have been taken to the Senate. So
it's even been more specific, and you're saying the Senate will have an enhanced role. But the reason why I'm asking is because I thought the Senate will use this opportunity to cement their position as the upper house.
Well, the question of upper house or lower house, that is old order. I mean, if you went to France, they've got a very strong Senate, but they never call themselves the upper house. I think this is a British tradition. In the US, there's not really an upper house and a lower house. The two chambers are coordinated in terms of functions. And even now, for purposes of legislation and oversight, our powers are coordinated. There's not two parliaments, there's only one parliament. And where parliament has specific functions delegated to the Senate, the Constitution will say so. But
there's been a back and forth. I still maintain that there's been a back and forth about the upper house. And at one time it pitted you against the National Assembly. There's a huge outcry about it. I mean, it can't be that right now when you have the opportunity as the Senate to cement this and distinguish it, because I'm sure you mentioned the countries that there's no distinction, but that distinction will still work.
No, but let me tell you, in the UK, the House of Lords traditionally was the upper house. But if you look in terms of powers, it's got very minimal legislative powers. If you go to, let's say, some of these legislative bodies outside Europe, you'll find that distinction really, it doesn't really matter in modern democracies.
It doesn't matter. I know you've said that. But
and remember, when we had the Senate, at the independence, the House of Representatives was known as the lower house, and the Senate was known as the upper house. There was that distinction. But when it came to powers, the Senate in 1963 did not have the powers that we have at the moment.
Including impeaching the president?
Including.
My interest still is, there has been a hullabaloo about the Senate being the upper house. Suddenly, it's not there.
Well, I've given one of the functions which have been transferred from the National Assembly to the Senate. And the fact that at the end of the day, the only institution that can remove a president who is elected directly by the people, that power does not rest with the National Assembly. It rests with the Senate. There was a famous senator in the United States who talked about why those powers went to the Senate and not the House of Representatives. And I think that is an important distinction.
This school of thought that the